Right. Okay. So we've got some pretty fascinating source material in front of us. 2 books specifically.
Yes. Unveiling the Afterlife, and then the other one. Unveiled. The greatest discovery in human history, proof of our immortality. Quite the title.
It really is. And what jumps out straight away is what they're built on.
Uh-huh. Over 50 years, they claim, of research, just focused on near-death experiences, or NDEs.
Yeah, 50 years. So it's not just, a few interesting stories here and there. They're talking about a massive amount of, data gathered over decades.
Exactly. A huge collection of accounts.
And what we're doing in this deep dive, the goal here, it's not simply to retell those stories.
That's right. No, and it's also not quite the standard scientific breakdown either, just looking at brain activity or something.
Right. These sources, they argue there's something deeper.
Yeah.
Like a meaningful underlying message that runs through all this NDE research.
And that's where it gets really interesting. They don't just see this message as, like, a footnote. They see it as, monumental.
Monumental is the word. They're basically putting it forward as actual proof.
Proof of the immortality of the soul. I mean, that's the core claim.
And they really double down on it, calling it potentially the greatest discovery of all time.
Which is, a staggeringly bold statement.
Absolutely huge. So that's what this deep dive is all about. Starting now, we want to walk you through their thinking. How do they even arrive at that kind of conclusion?
Yeah, what is this meaningful underlying message they think they've uncovered?
It does make you wonder, how do you bridge that gap? You go from collecting stories, individual experiences.
Looking at the physiology, which is, where a lot of the traditional NDE science sits.
Exactly. How do you get from that to such a massive claim about, life after death, existence itself?
Well, their argument, as I understand it, hinges on consistency. They're saying there's a pattern, a kind of narrative that just keeps showing up again and again across thousands of these documented cases. And that, they believe, counts as evidence. Experiential evidence, maybe?
Experiential evidence for consciousness surviving death.
Right.
And they seem to suggest that maybe traditional science, by focusing so much on how it happens in the
brain, the material explanations, yeah.
It's kind of missed the significance of what people are consistently reporting in the experience.
Right. They're saying, look at the content, the journey people describe, who they meet, the insights they bring back. These sources argue that when you synthesize those patterns, shared themes.
A picture emerges that, doesn't easily fit into just brain shutting down explanations.
Precisely. Their point is, the sheer consistency, the specific details reported by so many different people, different ages, cultures, backgrounds over such a long period.
50 years of it.
That consistency, they argue, can't just be explained away by, lack of oxygen or psychological factors alone. It points, they claim, to something real, something objective, beyond the body.
So it's this claimed pattern in the experiences themselves that forms the basis of their proof.
That seems to be the crux of it, yeah.
And they believe they've kind of pulled all this together, synthesized this huge body of work into something coherent.
Something that points very strongly, in their view, towards consciousness continuing.
So it's presented not just as, here are some cool stories, but as, here's compelling evidence for a fundamental truth. It's a really bold premise we're diving into.
Absolutely.
And that's the plan for this deep dive, right?
Yeah.
Each week, we'll take one lesson or maybe a chapter from these books.
Break it down.
And explore the specific ideas, the steps in their arguments, so you can really get a handle on how they made this case for, such an incredible claim.
And tying it all together, they're essentially saying, look, after half a century of digging into this, the evidence isn't just, interesting anymore.
They're saying it's conclusive.
Conclusive proof of our immortality. Potentially, the greatest discovery ever.
So, wrapping up this initial look, these sources make this incredibly bold claim. NDE research proves the soul is immortal. They call it maybe the greatest discovery in history.
It's quite something.
And our deep dive, week by week, is going to unpack their argument, look at their findings, their logic, allowing you to explore this extraordinary premise directly from the source material itself.
Which leaves you with a pretty big question to mull over, doesn't it? Hypothetically, if this claim is true, if proof of the soul's immortality is the greatest discovery, what would the implications actually be for how we live right here, right now?
Make sure to subscribe.
Right.
Give this video a like.
Okay.
And comment. And importantly, tell your friends.
Subscribe, like, comment, share.